The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us in our webinar today. We're going to get started in a few minutes while we're waiting for more people to trickle in. And while we're waiting, I'm going to launch a poll to see what kind of participants we have in the room this morning. So if you can just take a minute to fill this out. All right, thank you for filling out our poll. It looks like we have an even split between First Nations administration, local and regional government, and non-government as our participants today, and a few people from consulting. So I'll just wait for another minute or two, and then we'll get started soon. All right, I think we'll get started now. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our webinar on partnering on energy efficiency, FortisBC and Osoyoos Indian Band. As you can see on the slide, there are two options to connect to your audio. You can use your audio on your computer, or you can call into the telephone line, and that access code is below. So my name is Elena Chia. I'm from the Fraser Basin Council, and I also have my colleague Jim Vanderwall from FBC here today. So this webinar is part of a series that's under our First Nations Home EnergySave program. And the goals we have in this program is to reduce energy consumption, particularly for residential buildings, to share success stories between First Nations communities who have been engaged in energy efficiency, to build local capacity of First Nations staff and elected officials, community champions, and then to tie housing energy efficiency to supporting economic development. And if you're interested in learning more about our program, the website is available on this slide, and you can go check out our webpage. So some quick logistics about our webinar. We're going to keep everyone's audio muted to avoid any background noise. But if you're thinking of questions throughout the presentation, you can write them into the question box that you see on your side panel. And when we move into our Q&A session, which will be after the presentation, we can also selectively unmute people if you are open to asking your questions verbally. And if you encounter any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can send an email to fraserbasin@gmail.com, or you can type in any issues into the question box. So for our presentation this morning, we're really lucky to have two great speakers. We have first Carol Suhan, who is the manager of the Energy Conservation and Energy Management Group at FortisBC. So she leads the program delivery for FortisBC's award-winning electricity DSM programs, with more than 20 years of experience leading behavior change programs. From solid waste reduction to energy efficiency, Carol works with organizations and communities to achieve their behavior change goals. She has an MBA with a specialization in communications and public relations, as well as certificates in public participation. And our second speaker is Darlene George, who has been the housing coordinator for the Osoyoos Indian Band since June 2011. Her role includes applying for funds from the government to build and sustain social housing units, maintaining their current housing stock, applying for government renovation programs, and handling rental arrears. And her goal in taking on this position was to build above standard homes for their membership, to promote accountability and responsibility, to reduce their carbon footprint, and also to help their membership transition into successful home ownership. So without any further ado, I'm going to change our presenter over to them. If you can hold on for just a moment.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Carol Suhan, with the manager of the Conservation Energy Group on the Electricity Division for FortisBC, and of course with me is Darlene George, the Osoyoos Indian Band Housing Manager. And we're just going to talk today about a project that we've been working together for the last 10 months, 9 months, and I think we've had really terrific collaboration and partnership, and we've also had some really good experience and outcomes. So look forward to sharing this with you. Before I start, to say a little bit about FortisBC, for those who may or not know, I don't know. Obviously, we provide natural gas for almost 1 million customers right across British Columbia, but often people don't know we also have electricity distribution and delivery in the south central part of British Columbia, so basically from Princeton to Kelowna to Creston, and with about 166,000 customers. And within that small service territory, we do have 5 First Nations bands, the Upper and Lower Similkameen, the Penticton Indian Band, Osoyoos Indian Band, and the Ktunaxa. And we've worked with all of the bands, but I think most closely with Osoyoos, and particularly with the program that we're going to talk about a bit more right now. And I've moved the slide forward already. Darlene's going to talk a bit about her association.
Hi, my name is Darlene George. I'm the housing coordinator for the Osoyoos Indian Band. I'll give you a brief bio on the Osoyoos Indian Band. We are a member of the Okanagan Nation Alliance, or ONA. We have 560 members living on and off reserve. We're known throughout Canada and throughout the world, really, for our high level of success through economic development. We own and operate many businesses, which include Incommute Campground and RV Park, Incommute Corner, and Incommute Gas and Convenience, Incommute Vineyards, Oliver Ready Mix, and numerous beneficial partnerships such as Spirit Ridge and Incommute Cellars. Our chief travels around the world to speak about the effects that economic development has had within our community. Clarence Louis is now just finishing up serving his 13th term. Elections are this year, but I'm sure that that's not going to be an issue.
So the program itself, people probably on this call will know about the ECAT program. It was started with BC Hydro, and then FortisBC Natural Gas joined. But on the electricity side, we were only able to start this program last November. It is a no-cost, full-service program, which essentially includes an energy assessment for the homeowner. We also direct install energy efficiency products like LED lighting, low-flow shower heads, and tap aerators. We do some minor draft proofing and hot water pipe insulation, that kind of thing. Also for homes that meet the criteria, we will provide refrigerators, insulation for attic, walls, crawl space, basements, etc. Natural gas furnaces, and with that, of course, advice that just encouraging people to the things that they could do. For example, turning off, the television when you're not in the room, turning down the heat, etc. In this particular program, we also have some heat pumps that we are installing, which is not generally available, but for First Nations, we've got some funding from the Ministry of Energy and Mines and Resources, and we're so thankful to them for doing that. So it makes this program a little bit different than elsewhere, but regardless, just in general, our goal this year was to have about 250 single-family participating, or homes to participate, and we reached that budget, that goal in February. So we got together and we thought, okay, we obviously have this sort of pent-up demand and we have this keen interest, we need to do more. So we did increase our budget and goals to 1,000 homes, in which we expect to achieve this year. We also have 1,500 multifamily homes as well, but mostly we're sort of focusing, when it comes to First Nations, on single family. And I think part of our success on this was that we've worked very closely with the service organizations, or try to work with them, and because they're the trusted source. When FortisBC comes in and advertises a program, people go, oh yeah, right. So they're just going to charge me more, or what do I have to pay at the end of that? So we realized really early on that working with social service organizations that this would work, and we of course did that with the Indian bands as well, and of course the Osoyoos Indian band. Well, we've had an extraordinary response here. As you can see, 100% of low-income households are participants, and 51% of all band-owned and privately owned Osoyoos Indian band homes. So a really high participation level. But before we go into the reasons of why this has happened, I think we want to go back to the beginning, which wasn't as successful.
When I first took this position, they were just starting to introduce the multi-tiered billing system. So from almost day one, well, I think it was introduced, in 2012. So I'd been in the position for about 8 or 9 months when they made it official. And I listened to members vent constantly about the unaffordability of having hydro in their homes. I researched different alternatives for sourcing our own power, solar panels, wind, which wasn't a beneficial one for the area that I live in. While solar was definitely beneficial, the cost of bringing that program in and outfitting our homes for the solar energy, it would have been 10 to 12 years before we saw the payback from that. And so what I came to understand, that the only way that we could bring these savings to our membership was to really focus on conservation and education. A lot of our membership after that multi-tiered billing system were really upset with Fortis. They were upset with me. A lot of our membership don't understand how they're using the energy in their homes. They didn't think that there's a program around that could make a substantial difference in their utility savings. And in many of our members, they just don't have the extra funds to make the necessary efficiency improvements to their home. Where am I?
Well, yeah, just say, I'll just go get the second.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, yes, we know, of course, when we launched this program, I think just given that sort of background that Darlene just talked about, that there was just this lack of trust. We were not seen as good partners. There's a lack of information, etc. And I have to say, we did have this really interesting meeting way back in the early spring or whatever. We did meet after a chief and council meeting, and all the community was invited. And I think almost the whole community was there.
Not even close.
Not even close. Okay, it seemed like there were many folks there.
We had an attendance of about 40 people that came to the meeting, and a lot of the 40 people that showed up are the people that I deal with on a regular basis that were very upset and finally felt that they had a forum where they could be heard and where they could voice their dissatisfaction with the hydro company, and they actually had a panel of people there to listen. So as far as band meeting goes, it was
raucous.
I found it kind of interesting, but I wouldn't have wanted to be in your seat, that's for sure, for the meeting. But it definitely having that meeting in the community, allowing our membership to voice their concerns. This was also in and around the time that they were introducing the smart meter. Mm-hmm. So not only did they get to vent about the multi-tiered billing system, they got to vent about how Fortis was going to put these microwaves on the side of our homes, and so it made for an interesting conversation.
Yeah, but I think, from our perspective, and yes, there were some uncomfortable moments, but it was one of the best things we could have done, because it really started conversation, and that really moved us, I think, forward. The second part that I say that is just been extraordinary for us, and we just feel so fortunate, of course, was Darlene George. Right from the start, she has been a champion of this program, and she's done things, okay, but by partnering with her, and I think that's how I feel about this. But anyway, she's done some extraordinary measures to get the kinds of participation that we're looking at. And
yeah, so when I first met with Carol, like I said, I'd been researching other government funds to try to bring cost-effective, like to make hydro more cost-effective in our community and affordable. I knew a bit about the BC Hydro ECAT program. I have friends that were participants in the Lower Mainland, and they were like, you should see something about this for your community. So I was actually mirroring the ECAT program from BC Hydro for an application for a government grant. Unfortunately, they wanted 80 or 85% of our members to be involved before they would let loose with some of those funds. And after 2 months, then I realized just how impossible 85% was going to be in that time frame. It was like Carol got in touch with me right at the end of that, and it was amazing, because it brought what we needed into our homes at a time when I couldn't access it from anywhere else. So the first step that I took after getting in touch with Carol was I wrote up a couple articles for the newspaper. I typed on Facebook, mentioned, are you upset about your rising hydro costs? Because I wanted to get comments going. I really engaged the community that way. My next step was I went right to our social worker and our social services department, and I said, hey, look, we need to sign up everybody that is on social assistance, on disability, and I'll fill out the paperwork. I just need their account numbers, and when they come to pick up their checks, you can have them sign the forms and I can turn them in. So that was how we were able to get everybody in that targeted zone, was because we just did the work and let them sign. And then when it came time to schedule, with Carillion, If they couldn't get in touch with the membership, they contacted me and I went to their homes.
And from our perspective, the other thing that Darlene did was she filled out the paperwork perfectly. That's really helpful. And I said that is helpful because we didn't have to be following up with phone calls or so forth. So that helps expedite the whole program as well.
Yeah, but when we first started taking the applications, it was like a trickle. We got the first set, from the social service, like from the social department, and we had a few outside applications, but not too many. It wasn't until Carillions set their first couple days visit into our community. Once that truck was seen at people's homes that filled it up, my phone started ringing and they're like, what the heck is that person doing? And when I explained it, they're like, well, I want to sign up. And so we ended up filling out applications on the phone. And then from there, I would email them off.
Yeah, so ultimately, because of all of that effort, I said before, we do have 100% of the low-income households participating and 51% of all band homes.
Yeah.
And it was, as Darlene just said, there was a real interest once the program started, and you could see it.
Well, our community
making a difference.
Yeah, I've had some members say that they've noticed, a significant drop in their bills just from changing out the lights. Another thing that I did was I really championed the program at monthly band meetings. Because we had smart meters installed, our chief and council passed a BCR stating that all of the homes on the subdivision, like in our main living areas, like the most inhabited part of our reserve, be installed radio off. And they also passed a BCR stating that they would rebate that added expense to the community. People had to bring in their bills to access that funds, and therefore, because they did that, I had access to all these account numbers, which is how I got the 51%. Like if we check out the applications, I think like 95% of them or 90% of them are in my handwriting. I just did them. I know that it sounds like enabling and a lot of work, but I thought we can educate after. We can educate and empower after. Right now, our membership needs to see these savings, so I just did it. It was easier than chasing everybody down.
Well, it works so well, and I think the other part here as well, since we've started this program, obviously there's still a lot of room for improvement, and we still need to do a lot more work. But even some of the members have been reaching out to us directly. And Kim Jones, for example, has been getting phone calls, just again from customers from the band, asking what they can do, behavior-wise, and what can I do, or what should I be doing. So it really started a fantastic conversation that we're just so happy to be, be able to help facilitate, and hopefully we'll grow that. So with that, I guess, we just sort of given you the background here, but, what are our learnings on this program? And I think, again, Darlene has learned some really interesting things, and so have we over the last, 7 months, 8 months.
Yeah, the one thing I really started to grasp is that education is where we're going to need to spend our focus. Education on how we're using power, where it's going, the difference between drying your blankets and hanging them up. The difference is those small changes in lifestyle can affect your pocket. You need to get participation levels in this program. We're really going to need to involve management teams. We have these services available. If we want to make a difference in the lives of people that are in receipt of social assistance, then you know what? That's where those applications need to be. You need to physically bring them down to the social services buildings. And you know what? Have somebody there to help them fill it out. A lot of people are really hesitant at trying new things, and especially when you're dealing with the older demographic or the poorer demographic, which really tend to be uneducated people. You really need to put forth that effort. If change is what you're looking for, that's the only way to get it. You need to develop a rapport, right? Become a team player, a team member, right? And sometimes, there's that one star on the team that goes out and rises above and beyond. We need to be those stars for our communities. If that's what we're looking for, and that's the change we want to be, we have to do that. And you need to ensure that there's ongoing open communication. When people have questions, you need to answer them.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that you've been really so good here, Darlene. Both again, if members come to you and you had a question or whatever, you came to us immediately.
Absolutely.
Or to Carillion Services, and just had that really prompt response. So
yeah, and there's one thing that I always put praise where it's due, and Fortis has hired a really good company with Carillion. We've had nothing but good reports back from our community with them. They're personable, they're nice, they're funny. You know what? And it made a difference once people were seeing that other people weren't having a negative experience with the people from Carillion. And I know that we had one issue with the brick, and I sent in a complaint right away, and it was dealt with. But I think that when people go above and beyond, if you recognize them, then you know what? They're going to go above and beyond more often.
Well, either way, it certainly has worked well. And again, I guess this is just, I think Darlene is talking a bit more about the things that you recognize in terms of, again, the lack of understanding of how people use energy.
One thing that I keep bringing up, I'll never forget, I went into a home and every light bulb, she had a 60-watt or 100-watt light bulb in there. And she's like, well, my hydro bill is $600. And, I drive by her house at night and there's lights on. And I was like, your 100-watt light bulb, if you change those to even CFLs, for every hour you have that 100-watt bulb on, you could use that energy for your house to light your whole house all day with these lower wattage bulbs. And so just changing that kind of thing, furnace filters, another big one, change your furnace filters. Not only does it help your furnace last longer, but it doesn't have to work as hard, so it's running more efficiently. Dryer vents, same thing. You know what? Every 3 months, take your shop vac out to the back of your house and vacuum out your vents. Little things like that add up very, very quickly. Keeping your house at a temperature, I run a really cold house, but I like it really cold in the summertime, and I keep it at 18 in the winter. And I have family members that live in Kelowna in a 700 square foot apartment, and I have a 2,400 square foot house and 3 kids, and I use less power than they do, right? So education and conservation is going to be the key no matter which way we go. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I got to say.
Yeah, I think the last thing, I know we talked about this, again, and I know we're just repeating what was said before, but again, we really need to offer assistance where necessary, and whether it's sort of that hand-holding approach with folks to help them understand what they need to do and either enter this program or in the longer term as well.
Well, I think the more involved we get in the beginning, the less work it's going to be for us in the end, right? Yes, what I did was enabling a lot of our membership by filling out the applications, by chasing them down. I do believe in empowerment, not enabling. But the reality is it was worth it in this case for me to spend I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 hours I spent filling out applications and doing that stuff, it was worth it in the end for the difference that it made. Like, you know, we have members that are saving over $100 a bill already. Exactly. And, you know, like, to me that was worth it. It was, you know, was it a bit of a headache with all my other duties? It was, but you know what? This is what needed to be done. So I just did it.
And we're so happy for that. Anyway, and I guess the other thing that we've learned over the last 8 months or whatever is that we want to continue this relationship and have even further collaboration. Again, sort of trying to address those gaps in education, so whether we could have more information sessions, you know, again, whether it's after chief and council meetings where, you know, Kim and I or whatever come down and we meet with members and just sort of talk about how energy is used, and perhaps, you know, there's things like even like, you know, clotheslines and so forth that we can just try and get people more interested in their behavior as well as the.
Well, if they're more interested there, it's going to spread, right? Like, you know, when people talk about what they're saving, and when people do that, you know, as they progress, you know, it's going to catch on. People are going to see, you know, it's just the way people are.
Yeah. So basically, that's so the end of our presentation. I think it's fairly straightforward, but I think that kind of on the ground work has just, you know, paid off in spades. And I hope you guys, everyone has found this interesting. And obviously, if you've got any questions, you can contact me or Darlene at any time. And I think that will probably open for questions as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Darlene and Carol, for your presentation and sharing some of the lessons that you've learned from your experience. It's exciting to see such a high level of participation from the Osoyoos Indian Band community. So yeah, as you mentioned, now we can move into our Q&A session. And I see that we already have a few questions up, but to give people a little bit more time to reflect on the presentation and think of questions, I'm going to launch a poll. And you'll see here, it's asking about what is the top challenge that your community faces in improving housing energy efficiency. And for the support organizations that are listening, perhaps to vote for the top challenges that you often hear from the communities you work with. So I'll have that up for a minute. I'm just going to close that poll and share results. It looks like here one of the key challenges is the affordability of renovations and maintenance, the second being consistent policy implementation, and the third being community awareness. So thanks to our participants for their reflection on these issues. And now I'll move into the questions that we have. So the first one is about the heat pump program. Does that include the full cost of installation and materials?
Yes, it does. So it's 100% paid. And yes, it is fairly costly, which is why we obviously needed funding from MEM to support. That said, going forward, we already are starting to have conversations with various bands to see if we can do some ongoing partnerships to fund more installations. So right now it's based on need. So whether it was community elders or homeowners or renters with disabilities or illness or whatever, that's how they sort of we determined which homes would get a heat pump.
Mhm. And how many homes have been installed with heat pumps so far?
Well, so far we only have 17, but we are looking at doing another 25 plus, but really that is for all of the Indian bands. So I think we're basically looking at about 8 to 10 for each band. So it's not a significant number, but
well, it'll be significant to them, right? I know that all our new builds we install heat pumps. It's a mandatory thing. It has been since I started the job as housing coordinator for the Osoyoos Indian Band, because I manage and put those items out for tender. It's a mandatory part of the building package.
All right, well, thank you. Our second question is about, it's been mentioned throughout your presentation about the savings from switching to more efficient lighting. Do you know any specific numbers for how much these savings are? Has there been monitoring around that, or is it more what you hear anecdotally from residents?
I just know what I've heard about people really noticing the significant drop, but I'm sure Carol has the exact numbers.
377 kilowatt hours. No, we do have assumed savings for whenever we do what we call a basic installation. So we go into the home and do the lighting and local shower heads. We do have assumed savings for that. We also do have quality assurance, so we do have folks checking to ensure things are installed correctly, and there is from time to time full evaluation just to ensure that our assumptions are correct. So yes, it is very carefully monitored.
She wanted to know a dollar figure per home.
Well, okay. I think, gosh, what would the average be? It really depends. Again, if it's just lighting, we're probably looking at, if that's 377 kilowatt hours, like $37 or whatever, annually. If we're doing, we also include refrigerators, we're doing insulation, then of course the savings would be significantly greater.
Per light? No, that's for all of them? Oh, wow.
And the next question is about the smart meters. Were there any concern with installing them?
I can answer that because obviously our band did a band council resolution. At first, we weren't even going to let them be installed. I know when smart meters were first introduced by BC Hydro, I was living in Mission, BC, and I knew that there was a smart meter fire in Mission before I moved back. So when I heard the smart meters I was one of the people voicing my concerns, well, how safe are they now? How has technology progressed that this isn't going to happen? And so they decided that they were going to allow them, but they had to be meter off, which means that they don't transmit the radio signals or whatever you want to Fortis. People were still upset that their meters got changed. But our band obviously looked at, okay, well, we're going to rebate them the expense of the radio off, and that helped alleviate a lot of the concern.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for clarifying that, Darlene. And our next question is the overall approach that you've taken. Do you think the top-down approach of educating after and seeing savings first is transferable to other locations?
Absolutely, I do. Because if you look at even basic advertising for any company, word of mouth spreads so fast. So if people are having a positive experience with the contractors you're using coming into the home to do these things to save people money, they're going to tell their friends, and their friends are going to tell their friends. So in just basic advertising like that, as long as you're using a company that is leaving the customer with a positive experience, you can educate more formally after the initial installations are done.
You basically start the conversation, I think, and then we can,
yeah, clarify after.
Yeah, and build upon those basics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think we answered.
Yes, it sounds like it's been a very effective strategy. And a question about, in your communication about benefits of this program to community members, have there been other benefits that you've communicated other than the central savings?
Well, I'll be honest. I promoted the program, saying that, oh, Fortis is they're going to be handing out a few heat pumps for qualified homes to boost participation levels and interest levels, because people are like, a heat pump that has air conditioning. We live in the South Okanagan, and it's not uncommon to have 44-degree days where your house is still 39 at night if you don't have air conditioning. So that was a really big selling point to get the numbers that we got. And then, of course, we didn't really tell them how we were picking people for the heat pumps, because I didn't want people to get discouraged. I wanted everybody to sign up for the program. So it was a little bit of withholding certain information to boost interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Home comfort is a key motivating factor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And our next question, what are the key maintenance needs for both the base ECAT measures and other measures such as the heat pumps? And can those needs be addressed through training a local First Nation member who delivers an annual or maybe less frequent maintenance procedure?
I know in OIB, because I've been putting the heat pumps in the homes that we build. I do have them serviced every second year. I advocate all the time in newsletters, with the change of the seasons, to change your filters. Some people say, well, twice a year, some say 4 times a year. But I figure that if I'm putting it out there to change it 4 times a year, then it's at least getting done twice a year, which meets the requirements for your HVAC system. Can you train somebody to maintain them? Yeah, just like you can train a plumber. Most plumbing companies have HVAC systems, are the people that install our HVAC systems. So most plumbing companies will work with you at a discounted rate if you're working volume. So that is something that we definitely negotiate.
Mm-hmm. And a follow-up question about the heat pumps. Does the program address ventilation issues, such as installing high-efficiency fans and ensuring adequate makeup air? This could deliver an indoor air quality benefit.
Yes, it absolutely does. Yeah, we know that this is a very, we're going into people's homes. We're changing sometimes the air tightness and the insulation levels and heating systems, and we're just being extraordinarily careful to ensure that that we still have adequate airflow, etc. And not only, like I mentioned before, but not only are we doing installed with all approved installation companies, etc., but we do have a quality assurance company that does follow up afterwards, again, to building professional standards to ensure that everything was installed correctly. So we're very, very careful about that.
Well, it's just Fortis's name on the line, right? When you're having these people come in, and
yeah.
So I'm all for it. We haven't had any heat pumps installed yet, but we have our first appointments tomorrow for our preliminaries. So we have a few people that are very excited to be having the contractors come in and install their heat pumps.
And we have installed, of course, an Penticton Indian band, and by all accounts, everything's gone very well over the past 2 years.
Oh, sorry about that. So the other question related to the heat pumps, there seems to be quite a bit of interest around that. What kind of knowledge transfer has taken place regarding the heat pumps, and is there the opportunity for business development for First Nations companies?
Well, at this point, they were just starting to do the installations tomorrow, but certainly that is part of the contract agreement that we have with the installation company, that there is an education element with the installation. And in the longer term, I mean, I think that's something we would have to work together on.
As a First Nations member living on reserve, and I can stress that if the person is licensed to install the system, we wouldn't have an issue. But that person would have to have all their valid tickets, all of their training, because I am all for First Nations members in our community getting work and being put to work, as long as they're qualified. But if they're not qualified without the required tickets to be involved installing HVAC systems, there's electrical involved in there. It was just mentioned to me that it's a 4-year course. So by all means, you know, our band would definitely support a member seeking that training so that they could go into that. But it's when you're dealing with plumbing and heating and electrical, you know, those are very, very, you have to be safety conscious. You have to have licensed installers, and I think I answered that as a First Nations member. I would not allow anyone into my home to install anything if they weren't qualified. Period. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Darlene. I have one last question from our audience. What measures are in place in case of a paradox where efficiency has increased, but so has consumption?
It happens. And of course, from the utilities perspective, when we do the full evaluations and we see that, it often our savings then will be adjusted. And certainly that's something that we just deal with on an ongoing basis. And when I talked about energy savings earlier, we do count them to be really on a very conservative basis, just for those kinds of reasons. And there's also like the rebound effect as well. You know, for example, if you have all of a sudden now you have energy efficient lights, and so you leave them on longer, but we try and take that into account into when we document our savings, our database, our savings.
Well, I would definitely, if somebody came to me after participating in the ECAT program and said that for some reason their hydro bill is now more, I would look at the situation, and I mean there's some analysis that I could do on my own, especially if they were on equal billing. You need to look at, okay, well, their previous year, how many people were in the home then? And I mean, you need to do your homework when that kind of thing happens. There's no reason that we can't spend 15 minutes and talk to them and figure out the reason behind that increase.
Actually, that's a really good point, because this did happen in some instances with the Penticton Indian band, and then we did literally went through every bill and sort of figured out what was going on, and
well, some of them might have had wood heat too, right? Because with this program, you're not allowed to operate wood burning, because it's about reducing carbon. So if you're not now using a wood heat, well, of course your bill over the year is going to look different, because where you were using carbon fuels to heat your home, wood burning, you're no longer using that now. Now you're using a more efficient system with less harm to the environment, and you know sometimes that's going to cause a bit of an increase.
and you don't have to chop the wood.
Yeah. I wouldn't chop the wood.
All right, well, I think that wraps up all of the participant questions we have. Thank you so much for your insight and thoughts on this. I'm just going to switch the presenter back to me for a moment, just so that I can show the contact information for both myself and Jim Vanderwall. And we want to just do a quick announcement about a new program that we have and an application call that we have for the one-on-one support program. So we're offering this with the objective to build the capacity of 3 First Nations community champions to plan and implement energy efficiency projects. And the one-on-one support program also provides access to up to $5,000 for community capacity building and training. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to get in touch with me. You can see my phone number and email address on the slide. And again, I want to say a huge thank you to Darlene and Carol for doing an amazing job with this webinar presentation. It's been great working with the both of you and hearing about the great work that you've done, and I'm sure we'll be interested in following up and learning more as this energy efficiency program activities continue in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, well, have a great day, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar.